It's only been 3 days since New Stone, and I find sleep impossible. It's not like I really need it anyways, but the exhaustion is starting to truly set in. I can feel it in my bones, heavy and dragging, making every step harder than it already was. I stick to my room for the most part, occasionally going to the lab. I spend time with Jeannie so that he's not alone. Both of us miss our friend. We just want them back. This gnawing that something terrible happened after they disappeared won't leave. It's nagging and it's loud. I try to get some interaction, keeping up Aster's appearance so that my disguise isn't in jeopardy after everything. It's hard to keep up with this lie. I'm tired of lies. I feel sick to my stomach every time I go out as Aster, wanting a break from the lies. Going out as Aster has provided some results. I think I saw Nariah at the farm. I'll go back tomorrow. I was too worried I got spotted, so I left. But I'm hoping I'm right. That Nariah has been under my nose this entire time. I returned to the farm, watching from a distant hill, relief setting in as I watched Nariah walk out of the house. I don't think I've ever smiled this big in a while now. A weight off my chest until I watched him stumble, coughing up mist and taking a deep breath. Artoria didn't fix it. Solus did say he wasn't sure if Artoria could or even would, but now I worry for Nariah more. I saw how bad it got with Solus. We had to take him to fucking Gaia for Jod's sake. I almost jumped from my spot when I saw it, ready to run over and help. Thankfully, as I stood up, my feet rooted themselves in place, refusing to let me move. I wanted nothing more to help, but I don't think my help would have been welcomed. Not yet. Not with how fresh the wound I had already caused was. Not with Artoria there. But I will watch, and I'll wait for any moment I can get to reach out. Even if it's just a whisper. I found a good spot in the inn to sit and read. I'm still studying the mist books when I can, focusing more on 𝑑𝑎𝑡𝑎 now that I know the mist caption circle works. I just need to never use it on a person again. I want to see if I can make it bigger, to contain bigger clouds of mist. Despite its first use, I still think this prayer could help a lot. I sit out by the farms, some part of me hoping to look out and see Nariah farming out of anxiety. I find myself often leaning against the storage house, nose buried in my books. Reading is still weird for me. Feels like I should be staring and seeing just a jumble of symbols that make no sense. Some of the farmhands have started to recognize me at this point. They stop by to ask about my books. I haven't really explained in detail, but it's nice to have somebody to small talk with again. I find myself talking more about Nariah than my books, though. Not by name, of course. But it's relaxing to have so many perspectives on this and what I should do. The advice kind of remains the same. Give them space. The concept of giving them space only gets harder and harder as I fear I put a whole gorge of space between us. But I find some comfort in some new friends. Or maybe friends? I hate to get too close, but this bunker is kind of depressing to be in at the moment. I like to spend time outside of it more often at this point. These people are kind, lending me an ear. I hope they think the same of me. It's argument after argument at this point. Tensions are still being worked out between the rebellion, and at this point, I think starting fresh would be easier than this shit show. But we don't really have a choice. From something as simple as the lights being shut off, to the slightest mumble taken as an insult to somebody's personal character. Everyone is just on edge. It's not nearly as bad as it was when we left for New Stone, but it still makes the base a living nightmare. Solus is busy with paperwork, and Jeannie might as well live out of the lab at this point. I don't know Olin, Flint, and Artemis well enough to take comfort in them. Not to mention Artemis continuing to work my last nerve. And Sylvia just keeps looking at me weird. Like they can't see anybody other than the person who put Nariah in that trap. I was hoping at this point I could, at the very least, escape that look. I fight the impulse to scream at Sylvia every time they look at me like that. It's impossible to forget how Nariah looked at me that day. I can't close my eyes without seeing it. That twist of fear and hurt and pain I caused and wanted to take back. I'd do anything to take it back. The cost means little. I just want a solution. I found myself at the farm again. Instead of hiding from the tree farm, I found a cave closer, keeping low and just trying to even hear anything. A glimmer that Nariah was doing any better than before. I was close enough at this point that a louder-ish whisper could have been heard, but I hesitated. I had a few invisibility potions, but I'd rather not use them unless I had to. I watched from behind some rocks as Nariah fed the sheep. Even from the distance, I could see the bags under their eyes, the lines of mist still staining their skin. As they exhaled, this mist seemed almost as if it frosted over their lungs. My eyes were attracted to Artoria as she stepped out. I tried to shift back when I saw her. My heart still raced out of fear and tightening. Holding my breath, at this point I drank the potion, but still found it hard to move. Looking down, I could see tendrils of skulk around my heel, small and yet foreboding. Easy to break once I noticed them, and I finally got to stand back, looking back over and seeing how Artoria's eyes looked past Nariah as they spoke about something, almost as if looking directly at me. I knew when my luck had run out, and I left, hoping to God Artoria didn't speak a word of it to Nariah. I knew I couldn't get that close again. I can feel eyes on me all the time. That laughing in my ears, a symphony of voices I can't understand. He's taunting me, laughing at my half-assed efforts to get closer to Nariah. I wanted his end of the deal fulfilled, but how do I even do that? He never explains, and he thinks it's hilarious when I yell. My frustrations, my threats mean nothing to a god who sees me as nothing more than a toy. I'm not dumb enough to know how little I mean to him, how little our deal means to him. I'm just leverage to ensure one less person can stand against Artoria. In Artoria's words, 2 peas in a pod. Everyone looks at me like I'm crazy. I flinch at noises in my head. I know damn well he's doing it to me on purpose. No one trusts that I am of sound mind anymore, that I cannot handle anything without snapping. I'm fine. I will be fine. Even Solus avoids putting things on my shoulders now, like I'm fragile, like I could snap and lose at any moment. I won't. I can't. I won't let the magpie get under my skin. I woke up and I felt like my body was on fire. Everything around me was moving so fast, my body was slow. Heavy. Everything is so heavy. All I remember is stumbling downstairs to make some food. It hurt so much to move everything. Suddenly I was in my room, watching the ceiling spin as I heard Cowboy meowing bloody murder at somebody. I coughed and my whole chest ached. Why does everything hurt so much? It felt like it took hours just to blink, turning my head to see the blurry figures of Jeannie and Sylvia. I closed my eyes again, only to open them to see Solus sitting by me, changing out a towel on my head. What's going on? I tried to ask out loud, but it only came through in my head. Even my thoughts weighed a ton. It's been 2 days and things have finally stopped spinning. I was told I had a pretty bad fever, that I was mumbling nonsense for the past 2 days. Wish I could remember it. Last time I was so sick I could barely function was when I first joined the Stampede. Almost 11 years sick-free, and I guess the stress makes sense. Stress of joining the Stampede, and this time the stress of not knowing if Nariah was okay. On top of that, feeling better, I tried to slip out today to go check on Nariah only to be stopped. Despite my insistence that I felt fine and needed to go check on Nariah, Jeannie refused to let me leave. Sylvia and Solus weren't any help either. Jeannie said he'd check on Nariah, he just needed to know where I usually went to do it. I wanted to do it myself, to just go out regardless of what they said, but they took care of me for the past 2 days. I wasn't really in a position to be an asshole. It's been 2 days now. I feel even better and managed to push everyone out of the way so I could go out. I can see how they looked at me though, like I'm about to crumble again. It's irritating. It was just a fever. I found myself onto that hill again, looking around and trying to figure out anywhere closer I could check in. I found some more low-hanging caves by the potatoes. I kept between the stalagmites as much as I could, watching from a distance as Nariah goes through the fields, still as exhausted as I last saw him. Why hasn't Artoria done anything yet? Why is she just letting them suffer? Before I could stop myself, I was slowly walking from my hiding spot towards them. The only thing that stopped me was Artoria's voice cutting through my anxiety. I stumbled back into hiding and tried to hold my breath, watching them talk briefly before Artoria heads back toward the house. I sighed in relief, hoping that her walking away meant I wasn't spotted. Listening and waiting to hear the door, I felt like it was an eternity. But this time, I didn't hold back on reaching out. As I walked closer, I noticed how unkempt their hair was, pieces of their usual armor missing, a slight shake to their hands as they pushed more seeds into the dirt. I was hesitant to cut the silence, standing only seconds away from them at this point. Nariah was all I said. Seeing my friend turn so fast, it made me jump. It was almost an eerie silence as Nariah stared at me, almost analyzing me before scoffing. Scoffing? Usually I would have hit him over the head for that, but I just watched as Nariah walks closer, closing the gap, closing my eyes and expecting to get whacked, but instead Nariah just looked over me. The mist is getting creative, huh? That's what they say? I'm guessing they had been seeing stuff for a bit now, but what do I say in this situation? I just stand there, lost for words and wanting to apologize over and over again. But if they think I'm not even real, then... While I was caught up in my thoughts, I saw how their brows furrowed, hands shaken, scrunched up their nose and trying not to cry. The attempt was a failed one, as I saw some tears escape. I felt my heart drop and I hesitantly took a step forward. Could I even touch them? Or would that startle them? They were mumbling something as they pushed away tears, but I couldn't really make out what it was. Reaching out and rubbing their arm at least. Seeing what reaction I got from something like that. The hug was almost immediate. I could feel how they shook. I tried to not start crying as well, a bit startled when they put their full weight on me as if they couldn't hold themselves together anymore. I managed to carefully sit them down, or I still refused to let go of the hug though. I wasn't one to object either. Everything hurt. That heavy feeling of guilt washing over as I just hugged them as if I might not be able to see them again. Trying so hard not to cry. It was a quiet few moments, rubbing Nariah's back and still trying to think of anything to say. Just anything, but nothing came to mind other than, it's okay, breathe. I look around to see Artoria out of the corner of my eye, stared at us, and I feel everything stiffen. I only hugged Nariah tighter, tracking Artoria as she drew closer, standing next to us and spoke almost sickly sweet. Nariah, what are you doing? I could feel my hands trembling as Nariah sat back to answer, simply uttering, I just wanted a moment with him, even if he isn't real. I just stared at them, not expecting that. Nariah really doesn't think it's actually me. Artoria, on the other end, seemed to stare into my fucking soul. Well, I'm glad you got a second. You should come get some rest, though. I'll finish up this patch of dirt, okay? They interacted so smoothly, my eyes back on Nariah as they pushed tears off their cheeks, standing up shakily. Nariah walked towards the house, not saying anything else. Artoria waited until they walked around the house. I got ready to get up before feeling Artoria's hand on my shoulder, like a giant weight keeping me stuck, watching as she knelt down to be face to face with me. You aren't safe for them. You tried to trap them in a circle as a panic reaction? There it was again. Of course it was there again. You're no better than my brother. Stay off the farm. Artoria didn't bother to wait for a reply, standing and give me a look that made me flinch before walking off. The walk back home was miserable. Everything shook from fear and rage, and I finally got a moment with Nariah, and I fell apart instead of talking to them. I was a bit surprised today when Solus approached me, asking if he could tag along to check on Nariah. I was a bit hesitant considering my last interaction with Artoria and being told explicitly to stay away. But I agreed, knowing Solus had the right to see firsthand how bad Nariah was. I don't think my words could do justice to just how sickly they looked. I took him to the hill by the tree farm first, unsure how close, or rather how active, Nariah and Artoria were today. I wasn't going to risk being caught again. With his wings, thankfully, it was easier to get up on certain pillars of stone. Perches available everywhere if you looked hard enough. I found one just over the chicken pen, seeing Artoria standing next to Nariah, holding a box as they pulled some more of the radishes from the ground. Tossed them into the box, standing beside Solus. I could see how he tensed up seeing Artoria. Eyes focused and a shake he tried to conceal. It almost looked like he would pass out. I urged him to go. It was almost like he couldn't hear me, clenching his teeth and gripping the stone behind him like an anchor. It was a partial chance I would get hit considering how out of it he seemed to be, spiraling. But if he didn't calm down, he was gonna spread mist. Whatever that lightning show was last time as well. He jumped when I grabbed his arm, staring at me like he was gonna attack. But he did relax, at least when he noticed it was me. I managed to urge him to go back, watching as he hid in his room as quickly as he could, probably to have his panic attack that I interrupted. I wish I knew what to do to help. I sat in the hallway area, watching his room from afar and letting him get all of it just out of his system. I didn't even get a good look at Nariah, see if that mist crap got any better. I'm hoping for the best, though. Solus finally came out of his room, and I felt like I was barely awake at that point. Solus sat by me and rambled, mostly to himself. It seems like he was trying to apologize for how he was freaking out. He had wanted to be able to stay longer and actually check on Nariah, but seeing Artoria kind of set him off. It's fair considering everything. I'm not surprised to hear it whatsoever. Before I knew it, I had suddenly fallen asleep. I woke up, God knows how much longer. I apologized for falling asleep while he was talking, but he seemed more relieved I got sleep and avoided talking about the whole farm thing further. I think I worry him too much about what Artoria said. That I'd never really know him. I think I should be more realistic about this, but some part of me can't stop being optimistic. Especially with all the wine and the lilies of the valleys I've gotten. I'm glad he wants to try all this fresh. No Lilith wine or eavesdropping on my feelings anymore. Not that I've really had somebody to talk to my feelings about. I took advantage of Nariah's delusions today. After not being able to check up on them about a week ago again, I was getting anxious. Artoria or not, I wanted to make sure they were okay. I noticed Artoria through a window of the house reading something, hopefully keeping herself busy enough as I slowly worked my way around the farm. Finding Nariah closer to the back and whistling to get their attention. Part of me really hoped Nariah just kept thinking of me as a mist illusion. I hesitantly stepped in the field and waved, letting them come to me. A bit surprised by the hug, I kept a smile on my face and hugged back. I was straight up about it too, explaining that I wasn't sure Artoria would like to know if I was here. I watched as Nariah rolled their eyes and shrugs, moving around to some bins behind the house in the center of the field. We sat by them, and I listened to Nariah talk about Artoria. They had gone to ask me about how I had been scoffing at their own question. Again, the mist illusion wins. As much as it hurts, I just nod, listening to my friend. They're so attached to Artoria, it scares me. The whole mist corruption scares me. I'm still really worried and wanted to ask about it. I tried to speak, and every time I did, the words failed. As I sat there and listened, I felt myself fighting sleep again. I feel so tired these days. Atticus? I heard from Nariah in a worried tone, bordering on suspicious. I mean, why would a mist illusion be tired? Of course they were confused. I'm good, just miss you, so sleeping's been a bit weird. As I laid over one of the couches, just staring at the ceiling, I watched Gennard leave the lab, taking a big stretch. My focus went back to the ceiling, focusing on my thoughts again about Nariah stuck at the farm, about being active as Aster, about Solus. Everything felt so overwhelming. As I zoned back into reality, I jumped as I finally noticed Genie crouched next to me. He had probably said something that I didn't hear. Next thing I knew, he was dragging me out of the base. As we walked well off the base, he talked about how he'd noticed my frustrations recently. I was a bit surprised. He had seemed so focused on his research lately that I just didn't consider that I was being observed. As we reached a more flattened out area, I felt Genie give me a push before staring at me with a determined expression and said, "Hit me." I was in a bit of shock considering I had already expressed that I didn't want to hit my friends. I said it to Alex, I also said it to Solus, but I guess this time was finally my fucking breaking point. I know I was told I'd hit at some point, but I didn't really know it until my fist made contact with Genie's cheek. I watched him stumble, not realizing how hard I might have hit him. I was just as surprised to get that punch back when he recovered. I don't know how much time we had passed just punching at each other, yelling about Nariah and Artoria, about how things were so confusing and overwhelming. Each blow landed almost harder than the last. I could see as Genie's brows furrowed and his legs shook, suddenly giving out as he collapsed into a sob. I was a little more anxious to visit Nariah today, considering the new plates and stuff. At some point, whether it's all this or, well, today, Nariah's gonna realize I was never an illusion to begin with. I honestly don't know if I'm excited or scared for that day, honestly. It was a matter of locating Artoria first now, and then Nariah. I think I've accepted that Artoria knows more than half the time that I'm here, but it's fine. I could see Nariah through one of the windows trying to find a spot to get their attention. I'm hoping that even from a distance with the new plates, that Nariah notices it's me at least. I was relieved when I saw Nariah perk up, dipping back behind the stalagmite to wait and see if Nariah would promptly come out. It took a bit longer than I thought it would, honestly. I almost left when I heard Nariah said my name. I looked around the pillar and smiled. Nariah stared at me, looking at the new plates, and I cleared my throat, trying to think of the best thing to say. Maybe I'll regret it later, but my whole excuse was my emo era. I'm not remotely confident, but it's kind of hard to tell them that I changed it out to sneak around the farm easier. There was some awkward silence before Nariah gave a small laugh. A tired laugh. I noticed the strain on it and felt guilty. We went behind the house and toward the back of the farm like last time. I saw and I listened, hearing about the Alara's illusions and how much they missed her. I want to tell them that I occasionally saw her, busying herself around Kinos as much as she could. Why would I even know that, though? The silence seemed to hang thick. I only watched as Nariah furrowed their brows, staring at the ground before standing up, turning to me and just yelled. It sounded like it came straight from their soul. "Why won't you talk to me?" It made me flinch, staring at them in complete shock. Everyone else talks to me, but you. All I can do is stare, watching his tears and muscles tense, watching how they exhaled, mist seeming to creep out. A taller figure walked around Nariah. I pushed my feet in the dirt, moving back before stumbling to my feet, staring at it, honestly more curious than concerned about the mist. The silhouette of large wings and antlers were almost impossible not to recognize, only to be confirmed with the harsh whisper of his voice, distorted and mixed with a higher pitched I didn't know. "Look how easily you fall apart. It's pathetic. Why won't he talk to you? Don't kid yourself." I gripped my teeth at such cruelty, seeing how Nariah's hand shook, trying to take a deep breath. I stepped closer, seeing how they flinched. "Nariah, ignore him, just breathe." I threw on my smile, pushing aside my own frustration, smiling as big as I could, standing in front of them and shoving my hands into my pockets. Just trying to seem relaxed. Really gotta stop listening to him. Not like you do most of the time anyways, right? I forced a small laugh, trying to ease the tension, just to hear that stupid illusion hiss again. "All this is happening because you two didn't listen to me." Again, Nariah stiffened. I pressed my tongue against my cheek, fighting my instinct to scream at it. I take a deep breath and rub the back of my neck, trying to find the words. Something to pull Nariah from the illusion. I set my hand on their shoulder. Maybe, but it's something we can fix. Because we want to, right? I pulled them into a hug as tight as I could, my eyes tracking the illusion carefully. I was a bit startled when my staring contest was interrupted by a literal puff of smoke. Finding Artoria in the corner of my eye, looking at her, concern and fear reading her face. I hesitantly let go of Nariah, stepping back, and just watched as Nariah turned to Artoria. "Are you okay?" Artoria asked, still looking at me as if I could decide, before smiling and wrapping an arm around Nariah. "I got you." While it felt very directed at me, I let out a huff at that. But the other part of me knew that if she could get rid of the illusion, she really did have Nariah covered for the most part. At this point, that also confirms that Artoria can't, for whatever reason, get rid of this sickness. I watched them go back into the house, knowing that I needed to let Solus know. I wasn't sure if I'd mentioned the illusion. I hadn't really been great at the art of lying recently. How much would it hurt him to know that the Mist toyed with them, using his face for such cruelty? But in the end, I'm glad I spoke. I didn't realize it was so upsetting for them. So maybe from now on I will try to talk to them. About what? I have no clue. I could feel the breath catch in my throat, seeing the red cover in my arm, exhaustion rattle in my chest, looking down at the knife in my hands, looking at the figure of Nariah below me, bleeding from a cut across their chest. My hand shook as I threw the knife and tried to press on the wound, make it stop, only to wake up to Solus grabbing my wrist, yelling at me to calm down. I looked around, seeing we were downstairs. I don't know how I ended up down here. I see most of the rebellion staring at me, all in sleepwear. Everyone looked worried, some annoyed. I managed to pull away from Solus, booking it upstairs. Everything was shaking. I felt sick to my stomach. It had been so long since I had a vivid dream like that. Everything felt so real. My eyes were stinging with tears. I pushed open my things, trying to find my tome. I needed to see Nariah as soon as I could. I felt frustrated when I couldn't find it, hearing the door open. Solus and Sylvia there. Sylvia held my tome. I stare at them, feeling everything trembling, wanting to demand my tome. I was awake. I am awake. With a deep breath, I asked for the tome as calmly as I could manage. Solus is the one to say no, telling Sylvia to go, taking the tome with her. It took a lot to just not start yelling, swallowing down some tears of frustration. Solus got me back in bed and said if I slept, I could have it back. My first impulse was fuck you, but I agreed, and he left. It took me back hours to go back to sleep, worried I'd go back to that nightmare, back to the last thing I ever wanted to see.